Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there, Hunters in Exile. Today I'm going to just update you all on how Scourge League has been for me since we're now about 10 days into the league. I'm going to show you my current build here in the background and how it clears and plays, so I'll give you a brief synopsis on what's been going on and then explain what I'm doing here. So I'm definitely more of a casual Path of Exile player, like I rarely do endgame bosses or play more than a few weeks each league, but I was pretty adamant on finally killing Maven this league. Yeah, I mean it's not a huge deal, but it is for me, so that's my goal. I've re-rolled my build like 3 times now already, and I'm finally sticking to it for the long run. So now my first league start was actually Poison Concoction Pathfinder, which I actually did not like because scaling it needed some pretty decent gear and Awakening Gems, and I'm a broke bitch, so I dropped it in like T4 maps. And then I rolled Seismic Trap like a meta bitch because it's really cheap to get going as a league starter at least, and I managed to take it into red maps without any gear that wasn't self-made or found. Now I do need to point out that while I'm not in a solo self-found league or in like a small private league, I really hinder myself because I hate trading in Path of Exile like a lot, and so I only pretty much trade if I absolutely have to. I usually play private leagues with like 4 people or so, or just solo self-found, but this league I really wanted to make a build that required very specific uniques, so I figured it wouldn't be okay to do that myself. So sorry, but long story not so short, I ended up scraping enough money together to buy Arakaali Fang so I could do Spiders, which was my dream build since the league announcement. And I really wanted to make Spiders work out since they nerfed pretty much every other minion build, and now everyone's just playing Skeletons, which is really boring. So here I am with Spiders, which isn't really a unique or innovative build on its own, they've been around forever, but I had a few ideas that I think worked out. First is that I did run Occultist over Necromancer. Necromancer doesn't really do much for spiders, unfortunately. Yeah, it gets some more damage, but that's about it. Plus 2 minion gems doesn't help. Bone Barrier is largely unneeded as I run Molten Shell. And so the only real bonus here would be to get offerings affecting me, but since I don't have a trigger wand anyway, manually casting Desecrate and Spirit Offering is just a bit too much. So I went with Occultist, mostly just for Profane Bloom. It does allow us to have some nice clear with the pops from that, since thankfully minions can proc it. This is going to get unorganized really quick, so let me just start back with the gear I'm using. Arakaali Fang, obviously core of the build spiders. The other core part of this build is the new Gravebind gloves, as they allow us to semi-automate the build. I say semi because Profane Explosions destroys corpse or something, like they don't always generate spiders even if I'm standing on corpses when they pop. It's kind of weird, it feels rather clunky. So yes, it does allow spiders to spawn from spider kills, but it's kind of hit and miss. What really helps is the fact that with these we can run other minions and not worry about them killing our Writhing Jar spawns or ruin our other setups for summoning spiders. So while we're clearing, we can just kind of drop Writhing Jar spawns anywhere and our minions or Desecrate will kill them and get more spiders up and going, and we can just keep rolling. It works out very well, and it's so much smoother than playing spiders before since resummoning them is now guaranteed. And of course we're going to be using a Writhing Jar. This is the core to get spiders rolling, as Jar and Fang obviously. So the other item that we're going to be using is pretty common with spiders, which is the Ancient Skull Bone Helm. It makes sense because spiders can't die, so they can get the Whistler's buff and get 50% increased attack speed and damage for basically no downsides. Now in order to protect our other minions though, we do have to link an anomalous controlled destruction to them in order to reduce their crit chance by 100% rather than just 80%, so they cannot crit. They haven't killed themselves yet, so that's pretty good. Now let's get into where I had an idea to make the spider build stand out. Now I had seen a YouTube video on Jungroan who did a cult conversion seismic trap using March of the Legion boots, and at the time I was running my seismic trap build, so I went and tried it, and I noticed that yeah, using March of the Legion for aura spams was super powerful, but also equally as clunky, as you need to keep them up and swapping your hotbars and using your skills, and yeah, it's a lot to manage. You have flasks and auras and your skills. It was fun to play, but it definitely hurt my hands. Then I got the idea, oh, mini builds don't have to push so many buttons. I could do March of the Legion with auras on that. So that's where I figured I'd use it. So I'm doing 4 auras on March of the Legion, which are Malevolence, Determination, Grace, and Purity of Elements. Purity because I'm using like all uniques, so my resistances are crap, but also it grants immunity to all elemental ailments, which is pretty sick. And now since we can automate basically all of our flasks with the cast when full on charges enchant, we can play Aura Piano instead of Flask Piano. We might as well talk about Flask while I'm here. Since I'm running a more tanky build that's up in the fray compared to like Seismic Trapper, I have gained X charges when hit by an enemy on my flasks as well, which basically means they're always active and always at full charges. So I have a Writhing Jar, a Quicksilver Flask, and then Phasing, Evasion, and Armor Flask. So I don't really have to touch my other flasks other than Quicksilver, and then Spawn Worms occasionally. The rest of the gear is basically just filler defenses for now. It's just what I had available, unfortunately, since I have like zero money. I went CI and energy shield since I had Aegis Aurora, and I'm running around 42,000 armor right now, which means I get about an 800 energy shield on block, which isn't too shabby, but it'll scale up more when I level up my gems. I'm using Skin of the Loyal, which I plan to upgrade, but just because I needed to use the global defense modifier to bump my energy shield, which is severely lacking. So the ring I'm using is Profane Proxy to deliver my Despair Curse on Skitterbots because it's one less button I have to push. The other ring is just an energy shield ring with Dex. Belt is Darkness Enthroned because I'm a minion build and that's what you have to run. It's got an Amanamu's Gaze and a few Ghastly Eye Jewels for energy shield on the belt. And the amulet is Jinx Shuju for 10% damage reduction going to my Spectres because I'm running Spectres. To fill out some stats and defenses, I also grabbed a few minion cluster jewels, which are dirt cheap, and crafted energy shield on it, and that's about it. Now I already talked about some of the skills I was using with the gear, but let me finish that up really fast. First is that we're going to be using a lot of auras thanks to these boots. Now for permanent auras, I'm going to be using Skitterbots, Tempest Shield, and Discipline. Tempest Shield now is really nice because it basically grants me all of my spell block. Skitterbots are there to deliver my curses with a Profane Bloom, and Discipline is Discipline. Then the other 4 auras I mentioned from the boots, Grace, Determination, Purity of Elements, and Malevolence. These are all synergizing very well with Skin of the Loyal and the Flasks as well that give bonus evasion and armor. So I'm sitting at like 87% phys mitigation and like 74% dodge, on top of 75 block and spell block with glancing blows, and chaos immunity, bleed immunity, corrupted blood immunity, stun immunity thanks to Occultist, and elemental ailment immunity. Plus a big fat, 6 to 9k molten shells constantly up as well. So even though I'm getting hit through the blocks due to glancing blows, it's pretty much okay since my mitigation is rather high, and 10% of that gets sent to Spectres, and then I regen 800 energy shield immediately, so the build itself is very, very tanky. I don't feel threatened very often, and I can go, 200 plus deep into Scourges. Now obviously though, this build is a time bomb because if you drop your auras in the middle of a fight or a pack, you're essentially dead. So you really need to pay attention to those and spam those auras all the time. I'm running Spectres on the chest piece, so with the anomalous control destruction so they can't trigger Ancient Skull, and they're basically just 3 utility Spectres. A Carnage Chieftain and a Host Chieftain for all my charges, and then a Demon Harpy for the physical damage scream. You can learn more about that on Gazzy TV's channel, who does a lot of Necromancer nonsense. So they are my charge generation, and I'm planning to either slot in an Animate Guardian as well when it's level 21, so I can get Fortify, Blind Aura, and movement speed once it can sustain him. But since I haven't taken any defense notes for my minions, I'm worried about the survivability, so I'm going to plan that one out a bit more carefully before I do that. But in the meantime, I just will probably get a 5 blue 1 red Skin of the Lord so I can put in Meat Shield to keep my Spectres alive for now. Now the helmet has my utilities set up. Now since I have so many buttons to press with, the 4 auras I have to spam, Convocate, Molten Shell, Flame Dash, I don't really have room to put more skills in it, so I wanted to put everything in, to one last button. So I sort of did like an automated setup, which is actually pretty common. I saw this on Reddit and I didn't understand it first, but now I do. This is Arcanist brand that's doing Hydrosphere, Assassin's Mark, and Spirit Offering. So at least on bosses, I can just drop it on them and then get the damage buff for the spiders. It applies my second curse, and all that's just on one button. So the reason why we're running Hydrosphere, at least as far as I'm aware, is that since we're running Splash on the spiders, the Splash can hit the sphere, and the sphere will get a Splash a little AoE as well. And so if the sphere is directly on the boss, you get your initial hit and then the Splash from the sphere. So you basically overlap damage, and it's essentially double damage. So yeah, that's how I understand it, and I hope that's how it works, but this build does do bosses pretty well, so it makes sense. So the map clear is pretty good. It's largely reliant on Skitterbots being present to deliver the curse for Profane Bloom, and the large packs make the clear actually feel good. So more density actually helps us build a lot. Boss CPS is okay. It's not the best, but it definitely works. My gens are mostly under leveled right now, so there's room to improve for sure, but it gets the job done on a fairly limited budget. Now the only fear I have while mapping or bossing is just losing the auras and buffs and getting my teeth kicked in immediately. And then obviously losing my spiders, which is a huge pain, but right now it's just a mild inconvenience. I did do Sirius earlier and he kicked my ass. Not only is it just because Sirius and Divebeam is Divebeam, but because I had a hard time trying to resummon my spiders in the fight because he killed all my specters and I had no way of killing the worms anymore. So I need to figure out some way to keep my specters alive more often on like big boss fights, so that way they can kill the worms and actually spawn my spiders. Now, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on this build for sure. The Squire Shield to get 6 spiders would be a huge bonus, but then I'm probably have to redo all my defenses, I believe, since I'm going to be losing the Aegis Aurora Shield, which is pretty much all my regen on block as well. Now, if I get that at some point, I could probably convert back to life and change the chest piece as well, but that's so long away that I'm not really planning on doing that right now. It's about 50x, and that's 50 more x than I currently have, because I literally can't get drops this league. I'm currently pushing T16 maps though, and doing 200 plus Scourge without much issue, and I plan to use this to farm a bit since I actually got this up and running and it feels pretty good. But like I said, I'm pretty casual pull player. I'm not doing anything crazy like money making plans, so it'll probably take me a long time to get enough currency to afford a Squire if I even get that far, but that is ultimately my goal for the build. That's all for now though. Thank you all for watching, and good luck out there, Exiles.